Good evening, everybody. Sammy Thunder here. Welcome back to the channel. This weekend has been nuts, to say the least. So, I want this video to be very calm, relaxing. I have to subdue myself here to, take a breather, a reset, as we like to call it in the hobby. And every now and then, I like to do these videos. I've done them here on my channel. I've done them on the For Collectors channel. I kind of just provide an update on where my collection stands. And as you all know, I focus my attention on the 4 players that I like to collect. Tonight will be Christy Mathewson. Tomorrow will be Tom Seaver. Day after, Nolan Ryan. And we'll finish off with Willie Mays. And if there's time, Andrew, I'll do the basketball for you. Larry Bird and Bill Russell. Maybe even Magic Johnson too. He might make an appearance. I look at my collection now of Christy Mathewson. I'm looking at the tabletop that I have right now of everything. And it's quite interesting to see everything laid out together and to see the vastness of preferences that I have with Christy Mathewson. It's a little bit of everything. Now, there are so many big pieces out there that are just out of reach, but maybe one day. Pastime Novelty is the postcard that I really like. REA had one, but the grade was the highest grade, 6.5 I think it was. And I think it went for, after auction fees, probably close to $4,500 maybe even more. It's a great piece. But I'm looking for a lower grade of that one. But that's not what this is about. I wanted to share with you guys some of the cards that I have. It's really fun. I'm really proud of this collection. And I'll share a brief story so that this video doesn't go on forever. So, here's the first one. Tough to find without paper loss. 67 Venezuela Retirado of Christy Mathewson in a 2. It's funny, I remember Mookie was telling me a story. We were talking about Venezuelans. I think this is a couple months ago. We were going to a card show and we were just talking about this card, and a 2, and I think he was saying a 2 for a Venezuelan is like an equivalent of a 5 or a 6, which I thought was pretty funny. But I'm very proud of this one. This one doesn't have paper loss in the back, which is common. These would be put into albums, glued on or taped. I don't know. I think it was glue. But I got this last year in September. I was referred to a dealer on Facebook and made a nice deal for this. Really, really striking card. Only one that I have from the Retirado set, but really that's the only one I do want from it, so very, very proud of this one. I don't think this set gets a lot of love, but it's really cool how many stars are in this one. The Christy Mathewson Polo Grounds game card. There's a lot of writing on it, a lot of print on it. Sorry, it's not focusing very well. There we go, that's much better. Long fly to center field, out, strike. I haven't looked up how the game works. I probably should, but really I kind of fell in love with the look of the card and the pose that Mathewson has during his windup, or his, I don't know if he was from the stretch or in his windup, but the back is beautiful too. The old Polo Grounds. You hear stories about it. My grandfather went to games at the Polo Grounds. I want to say maybe my dad did too. I'm not sure. He would have been really young, but my grandfather definitely went, and my great-grandfather definitely went. So I've heard a lot of great stories about the Polo Grounds. And every now and then I get a chance to drive by the site as well. Here we have the 1939 centennial stamps. Mangini and I were talking about this at the East Coast National a little bit. Not this particular, not the Christy Mathewson in particular, but he was telling me that he has one from this set as well. I don't remember which player, unfortunately. We were talking about a lot of things that day. I want to say it might be Walter Johnson or Ty Cobb, but these are really cool. For 1939, these stamps had just really a lot of color and design to them, and celebrated a lot of the big Hall of Famers. I want to say the 5 are definitely in this group. I think there's more beyond just the original 5 Hall of Famers, but it's a cool piece. I got this at Philly from Alex, who I cannot wait to see him at Philly again. If there's a guy who has really unique pre-war stuff, he is the guy for that. So when the Philly show is in a couple weeks, definitely beeline to his table. Hopefully find some really cool stuff. He's such a good guy to work with too. So this one needs no introduction. The 1949 Leaf Premiums. If y'all are engaged in all the videos on the hobby, this is no surprise. This one came from the 4 Collectors live stream of the first trade night ever in the midnight hour. Orlando and I made a trade. It wasn't really midnight, but it kind of felt like the last hour. Made a trade. I had my, 55 Koufax, the rookie, and an SGC3, and Cash Kicker as well. And Orlando and I made this trade. He already has one in a PSA 5. It's the highest grade known. And I really feel honored that he was willing to trade his duplicate to me. And for a 3, this is pretty phenomenal, because I know these were very delicate. If they were handled improperly, they would get damaged very easily. So I'm proud to have this in my set. I'm proud to have made the trade with Orlando, and no looking back. This is the first Mathewson piece that I picked up ever. The T206 classic of him in the white cap. Let's see if it will focus a little better for y'all. But this one came from eBay. I just paid outright for it. Obviously, it has a lot going on. Some graffiti, some bite marks, but it has a lot of character to it. And again, just, T206 is just a legendary set, as we all know. The 150 series, which I understand is a little more challenging, but nothing outrageous in terms of difficulty. Just a little more, not rare, but a little more challenging, a little more difficult to find. I'm kind of just repeating myself here. But it kind of feels nice to keep this in the collection because it's the first Mathewson I've ever picked up. Just consolidating what I've already shown. Okay, let's move on. This is not so much a Mathewson piece, but this was my first ever auction win in general, and that was from the REA auction. And this has the entire Giants team from 1912, and they were in Alabama at the time. I don't know what part of the season this is. I would assume that maybe it was They typically went down to Texas during the spring training, so maybe they're on their way down. I don't know. But you got Maddie right there. He's actually wearing the Unger Baking Company hat backwards. You got McGraw one row ahead of him, kind of looking away, kind of messing this whole picture up because I think he's the only guy not looking in the picture. But what's unique in the bottom is you have Ed Mackle, the trainer. He's identified just simply as trainer. But Mackle and McGraw had a very long-lasting relationship. Started in Baltimore. Mackle was the guy that just made sure everybody was healthy, was physically just ready to go, and treated injuries and so forth. But quite a cool card. Not a piece you find every day. Connie Mack's All-Stars. These are tough to find in one. Typically these would pop out. You make them stand up or just remove the red from the player. It would just be like a pop out, just focusing the player. But the contrast between the figure of Mathewson and the red is just really stunning. This one also came from the Philly show, and I thought that when I saw this, I didn't care about it being authentic, taped, or whatever, as long as it was in one. It was cohesive. In the back, you can really see how delicate the cardstock was. Like one little push, and I think this thing would have just popped right out. But thank God somebody graded this in time, despite the fact that it's been altered. But who cares? It's a great piece, great set as well. Some big names in there. But again, just like the Retroado, that set, I wanted the Mathewson exclusively, so that's where the set starts and stops for me. $19.21, Christy Mathewson hand-cut strip cards. And this one looks really, really nice. Pieced together or cut together. I like strip cards. I know there are some people who are not about them. I have no issue with them. I've mentioned this before. The only thing that I don't like so much about it is on the bottom under his name, ex-Giant pitcher. I understand this is not a playing day card, but it just would have been nice to celebrate Mathewson and his legacy by putting something other than X. It's kind of makes it sound like he is. All right, let me retract my statement. He's no longer playing baseball. It technically is the truth. He is an ex-Giant pitcher. But what about, not legendary, but legacy Giant pitcher or great Giant pitcher? Something to kind of exhume some positivity about it. Nevertheless, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it's a great card of him. There's a lot of strip cards of him from that time period, and I thought outside of the text, the imagery, the colors, and the facial expression just really exemplifies Christie's legacy. $19.09 S74 Silks, missing the back, because if it had the old mill back, probably wouldn't have it. It's a lot of money. These cards go for big money. This one did not. I was able to afford this, This one came from Woody at the Philly show. Had this raw, and I said, "Listen, I know it's gonna grade authentic, but I just want to get it graded." And he sold this to me raw. And I don't know if Woody watches my channel, but um, Woody and I get along really well. Whenever we see each other at the Philly show or the National, we talk about some unique and scarce items that he has and stuff that I wish I had. But he has a great collection, and I always think of Woody when I see that, when I go through and look at this one. It's a great piece, and again, missing the back, but it's a playing day item, so definitely at the height of his career too. This is a cool piece. This one, I always like saying the set name as well. Propaganda Montiel of Christy. Cuban card. This one I got off Discord. It was already graded. I belong to a vintage Discord group. I created one, but there's also one that I joined. And there was another Mathewson collector who showed me stuff that he had, which is awesome. And he was selling this. And I jumped all over it. When I saw it available, I said, absolutely, let's do it. These are very, talk about delicate, this is very delicate. These can be easily tarnished, if not cared for. I don't know what the centering situation is like when it came to the manufacturing of it, but if there isn't any chance that these would be off-center or known for being off-center, then I got very lucky with a very nicely centered one. So, great piece. I know this set has a lot of play. I think the Stan Musial is in this set as well, and that's a huge card for collectors. So I'm happy I'm not a Stan collector, otherwise I would be going deep into my pockets for this one, for a Stan card. It's a hell of a card, the Mathewson, so comparatively, financially, it's much less. Let's do this one. As far as I know, this is only one has been graded ever, and I own it. I don't know, I have not seen any of these postcards, schedules graded by PSA, but it is the Durham Duplex Razor 1913 schedule. This is a very special piece. This came from Dan McKee. He was set up at the National. I've purchased this off of him. I think I might have purchased some other things as well, but this is the big piece. And 1913 was not the greatest. I mean, it was a great year. I mean, a good year for the Giants. Mathewson was slowing down a little bit, but still had a good year. And looks like he was sponsored by Durham Duplex Razor, as you can see. Will he make good this year? Always make good. Read what Matty says. And he endorses the product. And you see on the back, you have the schedule, Brooklyn games at home, New York games at home. And you would answer the trivia question on the top there. So this came from the Dan McKee eBay collection that he has. And again, when I looked this up, I only found that this one has been sold. So it's kind of cool. This might be the only item that I have that's like only one that's been graded. So that of a pop of one, that's pretty phenomenal. It's a niche thing, but I think Mathewson collectors, this would be a really cool item because it has Mathewson on the schedule, endorsing Durham Duplex Razor. So I like it. I think it's cool. So this is a very special piece. This is one of my early Mathewson pieces I've collected as well. The 1912 S81 Silks. This is a pretty cool set. It's a giant silk screen of Mathewson here. There's other big names in the set as well. I know there are other content creators out here who I have some of different players. This one came from Harry Called at Garfield. I remember reaching out to a bunch of people in text and sending them photos, asking them their advice, telling them, hey, this is what Harry wants for it. Is it stupid to pay that amount of money? And the one thing I always think about is Orlando, and when he says, you may not see this item again. I ended up seeing this a couple more times, but for going for a lot more than I paid for. But his point was, these are not seen at every show. So sometimes it's worth paying a little extra for something that you may not see again. And despite me seeing it again at the National, I have no regrets paying what I paid for, because this is the copy that I have, and the ones I saw at the National were going for considerably more, so it's a great piece. It's a good item to have, good collectible of his to have. And we come down to the last three. This is one of my more recent ones, pickups. The 1909 American Caramel of Christy Mathewson. It's made in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, manufactured by the American Caramel Company. What's interesting about this card is there are variations. There's two. There's this one, and then there's the other one that has his last name spelled correctly with one T. So it's... I think I've looked up what the pop report is for these, and there's a... I wouldn't say it's like a crazy amount, but there's a decent... I think there's a decent amount of these that are out there. But what a card. American Caramel, obviously, it's a very popular set. And the Mathewson piece here, you know, just like a lot of the tobacco cards that were made around the same time, they really just showcase the, you know, the action sequence or the action shot of the player. So you have Christy Mathewson kind of going in the wind-up here, and behind him is a beautiful sunset, sky, and the field kind of just hitting the sun hitting the top of the, I guess, the horizon point, with the yellow on the grass kind of shining nicely. It was a great piece, though. Great collectible. Must have for Mathewson collector. I didn't think I was going to get this card, because I thought that the T206 white cap was enough. But I've grown to really appreciate the portraits of a lot of these players. You know, the Addie Joss over here, and Fred Merkel, who I've purchased afterwards. But I was with Greg. Greg just happened to be there at the time at William Chappell's table when I saw this, and I asked him his thoughts on the price. I told him what I wanted to offer, what I wanted to pay. He thought that was it was fair, good price, and for a 1 in this condition with the centering that it has, ones are typically, they just have so many different potential outcomes. Some could have paper loss, some could have major creases. This one has a crease going across, but it's so subtle you really can't see it. And unfortunately, there you go. You can sort of see it when it gets up close, but really it doesn't take away much from the image of the portrait, or not the image, but the portrait of Mathewson. And I've really grown to appreciate this more and more. And having this inspired me now to continue building the portrait set of all the New York Giants. And I started with Fred Merkle behind me. So I plan on continuing that. Probably at the Philly show, I'll probably try to find one more. I'm in no rush to build the portrait set. I know a lot of these T206s will be around, so it's not a race to the finish immediately. And finally, I know I mentioned that this was not going to go very long, but it clearly did. This Pinkerton Mathewson, the national pickup that I could have gotten in Jersey, as Mookie likes to make fun of me for that. But I have no regrets waiting. Paid a little more than I was anticipating I'm paying, but that's okay. I was with Don from A Show and Me, and Don was giving me a good advice. Cool scorecard back. Really just never been touched. Some stains, but that's to be expected. But it's never been touched. And, very little is known about this set. The only things that I know is that there's variations. There's the scorecard back, which I think is the most desirable. There's the blank back, which has nothing, and there's the standard postcard where you fill in your address and return and so forth. But big names are Ty Cobb. I think Walter Johnson's in this. There's actually not a real good understanding of how many cards are in this. There might be more that exist that we don't know about. But we do know that Mathewson, Cobb, Walter Johnson, I think those three exist, and then there's others as well. But very little is known about the Pinkerton set. It's amazing how there's all these sets exist, and yet so little we know about them. But hell of a piece. This rounds out my Mathewson collection as of right now. Who knows what's to come? I have some things in mind, but I'm now pivoting back towards Tom Seaver a little bit. It's just how my mind works. But again, the Philly show will be an opportunity for me to find some more portraits of some Giants from the T206 set. Hopefully I can find a McGraw or a Markard. That'd be great. But sorry if this went too long. I know there's a lot to share. So thank you guys for going on the journey with me. I will continue tomorrow with, I think I said Tom Seaver is my next one. So look forward to sharing that with you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you soon. Take care.